The instant Vivian stepped into the graveyard in a scarlet gown, every guest sucked in a breath. 7-centimeter Jimmy heels clicked against the slate path, bright and misplaced. Like a funeral march played off-key, the sea of black parted for her. In the eyes that followed were scorn, shock, but mostly fear. How dare she? Read to her own husband's funeral. Certifiable lunatic. The whispers rippled, then cut dead as she passed. Behind sunglasses Vivian catalogued every face, grieving, posturing, or hoping the madwoman would deliver fresh scandal. She never disappointed her audience. She walked straight to the front where her husband waited. Adrian, new head of Caldwell, tailored black suit, posture straight as a pine in the drifting rain, a cold statue even from behind. Vivian felt that familiar pressure without seeing his eyes. 3 months earlier they had been strangers. The press called their union the merger of the century, knotting two bloodlines that had never crossed. She bolted on the wedding day and became the city's punchline. The next morning he hauled her back and finished the ceremony. Now his elder brother Julian lay silent inside a hand-carved golden namu coffin, cause of death a blank. You're late. Adrian didn't turn. He still knew. Her presence registered in his marrow. Vivian slipped off her sunglasses and studied the fresh headstone, lips curving. Miss me already? Adrian turned. Rain darkened his hair. His gaze was ink, stirred only by her reflection. He tucked a rain-damp curl behind her ear, tenderness jarring against the grim hush. Red suits you, he murmured. Don't wear it to funerals again. Why not? She answered, loud enough for the crowd. I'm celebrating. Appalled gasps leaked out. Adrian's glare froze them. When he looked back at Vivian his eyes held the same sick gentleness. Home. We'll talk there. His fingers brushed her nape. Order, not caress. Afterward the black Rolls-Royce carried them to Caldwell. The cabin was vast, the air thin. Adrian said nothing, only traced her fingers one by one as if counting sins. Skyline gave way to private forest. The estate crowned its own hill, a sovereign 100 acres. 3 months ago she had gaped at its beauty. Now it was merely a gilded cage. Did you? He asked. Unspecified. Vivian lifted a brow. Kill Julian. I'd have made it hurt worse. Adrian chuckled and pulled her close. Nose in her hair. I know it wasn't you. That night I chained you to the bed. Remember? She stiffened. The night Julian died she had tried to run. He locked her in. Next morning the accident was broadcast. Why run? His mouth brushed her ear. Voice velvet. Arms iron. Haven't I been generous? Generous? She laughed. Lock me up. Tap my phone. Cut me off from the world. Nice definition of generous. You're my wife. His tone chilled. For life. The Rolls-Royce stopped beneath the palace-like facade. The iron gates groaned shut. Adrian half-marched her to the bedroom and locked the door. Change, he ordered. The black dress. The lawyers waiting. Vivian stayed put. And if I don't? He tore the silk at her neckline. The red gown puddled around her heels. She stared back. Silent. You change. Or I dress you myself. Storm swirled behind his eyes. She chose to change. He adjusted the collar. Knuckles skimming her collarbone, savoring her shiver. Behave, he said. This will decides everything. In the drawing room, the family and council filled the long mahogany table, all haute couture and grim faces. When Adrian escorted Vivian in, hostility and fear prickled like needles. Adrian took the head. When Vivian moved to a chair, he pulled her onto his thigh, arm branding her waist. Gasps were swallowed. No one dared speak. Proceed, he told counsel, as if the pose were routine. The old lawyer swallowed. Per Julian's last will, his 35% Caldwell stake is split. Skip to her share, Adrian cut in. Sweat beaded. 5% of Caldwell and South Point go to Vivian. Uproar. A bride of 3 months handed more than most Caldwells saw in a lifetime. Impossible. Miles, Julian's cousin, shot up. She schemed for it. Adrian's gaze iced over. Repeat that. Miles spilled courage he didn't have. Everyone knows she's insane. She married for cash. Now Julian's dead. The jackpot's yours and hers, a blur. A thud. Miles sprawled. Blood on his teeth. Adrian's foot pinned his chest. Apologize. I'm sorry. Miles rasped. Adrian straightened his jacket and sat, serenely draping an arm around Vivian. He placed the papers before her. Sign, darling. Vivian smiled at the bequest. And if I refuse? The room froze. Adrian angled his head. Come again? I don't. Sign. She rose. I want out. Under the prenup. Divorcing inside a year leaves me penniless. But with this, she lifted the will, I can afford to buy my freedom. Stillness spread. Adrian slowly stood to meet her eyes. Say it one more time. I'm divorcing you. Adrian. Game over. Adrian laughed softly, caressing her cheek. Think I'll allow that? You can't rig everything, she answered. Not once the police start poking into Julian's death. A bomb detonated in hush. Adrian's expression flickered. What do you mean? From her clutch she produced her phone and pressed play. A woman, if he dies. You profit most. Adrian. Cool, so? Woman, so we need a flawless plan. Silence. Vivian beamed at his pallor. Wonder how law enforcement will interpret that? Adrian stared, then smiled. Recorded me. When? From minute one. I knew you didn't marry me just to punish the runaway bride. You needed a smokescreen, an unstable wife who could take the fall. She headed for the door. 2 guards blocked. Adrian waved them off. My lawyer will call. She looked back. Good. Bye. Caldwell. Outside she inhaled free air. A black slid curbside. Before entering she glanced up Adrian at a window. Face unreadable. 3 months ago she ran not from hate, but from love. Too deep to bear when clues said he had blood on her brother's hands. He dragged her back and the torture waltz began. She hadn't been chained the night Julian died. She slipped out, cornered Julian, milked him, and bagged evidence able to sink Adrian. The car left the estate. Eyes closed. She smiled. Far from over. Adrian wouldn't quit, and neither would she. They were two of a kind, deranged, obsessive, fatal. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Think you can run? She typed back. Never planned to. Wait for me. Game just started. Outside the window she sensed his gaze tracking her. They would play to the final breath. Because that, for them, was love. South Point surpassed expectation. 3 minimalist floors. Pool. Walled gardens. Biometric locks. Legally Adrian proof. In the jacuzzi she sipped iced champagne. Savoring precarious liberty. Knowing the interlude would be brief. He would come. And she would be ready. Their story had started years earlier. Vivian still remembered the first time she saw Adrian. She was 16. Hiding in the garden to escape some tedious society dinner. When she heard a fight. Following the noise. She saw a boy being ganged up on by 3 guys twice his size. Outnumbered. He still fought like a cornered wolf. He won, but it was a battered victory. He ended up slumped against the wall. Shirt torn. Blood on his mouth. Vivian stepped from the shadows and offered a white handkerchief. You need this. The boy eyed her, refusing the cloth. In the moonlight she saw his face. Beautiful yet unnervingly grim. A thin line of blood at the corner of his mouth. Eyes sharp enough to cut. Who are you? He demanded. Voice low. An audience of one, she answered, smiling. You're a hell of a fighter. That was their beginning. Later, she learned he was Adrian, the second son of Caldwell, and the 3 boys had been friends of Julian, his half-brother. Julian never dirted his own hands. He simply egged others on to terrorize the illegitimate kid. They met again a year later. Vivian's older brother, Andrew, dragged her to a party. Adrian stood alone in a corner, the noise sliding off him like water off glass. Andrew followed her glance and frowned. Stay away from that one. He's trouble. What kind of trouble? Word is his mom was crazy. Killed herself. Runs in the blood. Andrew lowered his voice. Guys violent? Almost beat a kid to death last month. Curiosity hooked her harder. She picked up a glass, walked over and offered it. Remember me? Adrian studied her, eyes ink dark. Girl from the garden. They talked. Vivian discovered he wasn't the monster rumor painted. He was simply other. He saw the world at an angle no one else noticed. Razor bright and ice cold. After the party her driver was late. Adrian offered her a ride home. They sat in silence. Yet something electric moved between them. At her door he said, your brother's right. Stay away from me. Why? Because I'll hurt you. The look in his eyes was a vow. Vivian smiled. Maybe I'll be the one hurting you. They began meeting in secret. Adrian always knew how to vanish from the radar, taking her to places frozen in time, an abandoned aquarium at midnight, a theater slated for demolition, rooftop gardens no one used. They talked for hours. She fell for the contradictions in him, cruel and gentle, brilliant and naive, powerful and breakable. His gaze grew hungrier each time he looked at her. You're mine, he whispered once. Forehead pressed to hers after a kiss that left her breathless. She didn't argue. She felt the same claim burning in her. For 6 months, they stayed hidden until Andrew found out. He exploded, banning her from seeing Adrian. The guy's wired wrong, he said. He'll destroy you. She ignored him, sneaking out the way teenagers do, until the night of the storm. She heard shouting in the study, Andrew and Adrian. She crept to the door. Stay the hell away from my sister. Andrew roared. This is between her and me. Adrian shot back, voice like frost. She's my sister. I know what you Caldwells want and you use people. I love her. Love? Andrew sneered. Like your father loved your mother. Locked her up until she hanged herself with a sheet. Then came the scuffle. Vivian shoved the door open in time to see Adrian's fist drive into Andrew's face, sending him backward into the desk. Her brother's head cracked against the corner. He hit the floor and didn't move again. Blood pooled beneath his skull. Adrian stood panting, knuckles red. He looked at her, and something fractured in his eyes. Official finding, accidental death, Andrew slipped, struck his head. Vivian never forgot the image of that punch. The collapse. The spreading crimson. She froze Adrian out. Months slid into years of silence, until Caldwell proposed marriage. Her parents leapt at the alliance with the empire that owned half the city. Vivian didn't object. She needed the truth about her brother. If Adrian was guilty, she would make him pay. On the wedding day she bolted, not from fear, but from the terror of still loving him. Adrian hunted her down. Vows completed under armed escort. "You will never leave me," he murmured against her ear that night. A promise and a threat fused into one. Now Vivian stood at the villa's picture window, city lights glittering like hard currency. Her phone buzzed. Her personal attorney. "I've filed the last will," he said. But Adrian's counsel just warned that if you release the recording they'll sue for defamation. Vivian laughed softly. Let them try. She poured another drink. The real game had only begun, and she still held cards, about Julian's death, and about her brother's. The doorbell rang. On the monitor she saw a gaunt woman in her mid-20s, clothes from the bargain rack. "Vivian, I was Julian's assistant," the stranger said, voice quivering. "I have information about his death." Vivian buzzed her in. The woman slipped inside, glancing over her shoulder. "Name?" Vivian asked, keeping distance. "Nicole, Julian's personal aide." The woman's eyes darted. "His death was no accident." "Why come to me?" "Because you have the recording," Nicole said. "And you're not afraid of Adrian." Vivian studied her. Sincerity or bait? In this world the two often wore the same perfume. Evidence? Nicole produced a flash drive. "Julian gave it to me days before he died. Said if anything happened I should give it to someone who could stand against Adrian." Vivian weighed the small plastic rectangle. "Why now?" "I hid after he died. When I saw the news about you moving out of Caldwell I figured it was safe." They went to the study. Vivian inserted the drive. Folders appeared, titled by dates and cryptic codes. She clicked the most recent. A video sprang up. Julian at his desk, eyes darting like trapped birds. "If I'm dead, it wasn't an accident," he said at the camera. "Adrian's lost it. To take total control of Caldwell he'll do anything." Other folders held murky spreadsheets and email chains that smelled like embezzlement. One folder was labeled Andrew. Photos and documents filled the screen, autopsy angles, forensics, police interviews. While Vivian scrolled, a faint rustle lifted her head. Nicole lunged, a cloth soaked in chemical sweetness clamping over her mouth. Vivian twisted free an instant too late. The smell invaded her lungs. The edges of the room folded inward. The last thing she saw was Nicole's blank face. "Sorry," the woman muttered. "He paid too well." Vivian woke bound to a chair in a concrete room without windows. A single iron door sealing her in. Her head throbbed. Her tongue tasted of tin. The door opened. Adrian strolled in, dressed in cashmere and indolence. A file tucked under his arm. Awake? He knelt, brushed a knuckle along her cheek. "How's the headache?" "You set the trap." Her voice came out gravel rough. He smiled. "Obvious. But it worked. I knew you couldn't resist anything about your brother." He tapped the folder. "And I do have things I want you to see." He spread photographs across a low table, Andrew's death scene. Every angle she had imagined in nightmares. "You believed I killed him," Adrian said, voice calm as still water. "Didn't you?" She didn't answer. Her silence shouted. He slid a police report in front of her. Pages her parents had buried to keep scandal from choking the family's meal ticket. Conclusion: accidental fall. No homicide indicators. "I know you saw me hit him," Adrian continued, "so you assumed the worst." "I never explained because," his gaze darkened, "because I do carry fault. I threw the punch." Vivian felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Years of certainty cracked like thin ice. "Why now?" she asked. "Because you're not the kid listening at keyholes anymore. You're my opponent now, and you deserve the truth." He loosened her ropes, fingertips soothing the red rings on her wrists. "The rules have changed, darling." She rose, chafed life back into her hands. "And Julian, was his death another convenient accident?" Adrian's smile vanished. "Different story." He led her down a corridor into a room bristling with monitors. The villa's every corridor, every hedge, every wineglass filmed in high definition. "Welcome to the vault," he said. "Your temporary prison, and your safest hiding place." Vivian stared at the screens. Realization hit. He had been watching all along. "Protecting you," he corrected softly. "Julian was murdered, and the killer is still breathing. If they took him, they'll come for you next." "Why?" Vivian asked. "What kind of threat am I to him?" Adrian turned to face her. "Because you're holding something he wants. Or at least, something he thinks you're holding." Vivian thought of the flash drive. Nicole took the flash drive. "That was a copy," Adrian said, smiling. "The real one is with me. And the contents are very interesting. He walked to the console, tapped a few keys, and a screen lit up, displaying the files on the drive. Julian had been running massive illegal insider trades, Adrian said. He suspected I was investigating him, so he struck first and tried to frame me. He pointed to a snippet of code. This is the fake evidence he planted to make everything point to me. Vivian stared at the screen, her mind racing. If Adrian was telling the truth, Julian's death might be tied to those crimes. But why would anyone think she had the evidence? Julian came to me before the wedding, she suddenly remembered. He said if I ever needed help, I could turn to him. He also said we might share a common enemy. Adrian's eyes sharpened. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because at the time I thought he meant you, Vivian admitted. I thought he was hinting you had something to do with my brother's death. They stared at each other in silence. I want freedom of movement. Fine, Adrian agreed, but you'll have bodyguards. And I want to be part of every step of the investigation, no secrets. Adrian gave a faint smile. Deal. He extended his hand. Vivian hesitated, then shook it. His palm was warm and strong, and the instant their fingers locked she felt that familiar jolt. Years and heartbreaks later, the chemistry between them was still dangerously potent. So, partner, Vivian said, pulling her hand back, where do we start? Adrian headed for the door. By attending a party. Galaxy is hosting a dinner tonight. Everyone with a stake in this will be there, including whoever might have killed Julian. Adrian confirmed. And I've heard someone plans to take me out tonight. Vivian raised an eyebrow. And you're still going? The best defense is offense, Adrian said, grinning. Besides, with you beside me they won't expect me to be ready. Vivian looked at the man whose confidence bordered on reckless, and laughed softly. All right, but I'm wearing red. Adrian laughed too. Red suits you. Hours later Vivian swept into Galaxy's ballroom in a scarlet gown. Adrian's arm under hers. Every gaze snapped toward them. Whispers rippled across the room. Vivian lifted her chin, smile dazzling. To her surprise, Adrian played the perfect gentleman. Nothing like the domineering man who barked orders at home. Nice performance, she murmured. For a second I almost believed you were a good husband. Adrian bent to her ear. Who says I'm acting? Before she could process that, a familiar figure flickered into view. Nicole, the woman who had kidnapped her, now weaving through guests in a server's uniform with a tray of champagne. Vivian's grip tightened on Adrian's sleeve. She's here. Adrian followed her gaze, eyes icing over. I see her. What's the play? Vivian asked. We watch who she talks to, Adrian said. And then, he never finished. The ballroom lights cut out, plunging everything into black. Gasps rose, followed by a sharp gunshot. Someone seized Vivian's arm and yanked her sideways. A scream clawed at her throat until a voice she knew breathed. Quiet. Come with me, Adrian. He guided her through the dark, slipping past the panicked crowd. Another shot cracked. Closer. A bullet smashed into a decorative pillar beside them, spraying marble shards. This way. Adrian shoved open a hidden door and pulled her into pitch darkness. The door shut, muting the chaos. Vivian could hear only their ragged breathing. You hurt? Adrian asked, running light hands over her for wounds. I'm fine, she said. Was this part of the plan? No, Adrian answered grimly. Plan just changed. Lights blazed on. Vivian blinked and found they were in a storage closet. Shockingly, a third person stood inside, Nicole. Gun raised. The muzzle trained on them. Looks like game over, Nicole said, voice ice cold. Hand over the flash drive. Adrian lifted his hand slowly. It's not on me. Don't lie. I know you brought it. Give it up or I shoot, starting with her. The gun centered on Vivian's chest. Adrian's gaze turned lethal. You so much as bruise her and I'll make you wish you'd never been born. Threats don't work on me, Nicole sneered. I've got nothing left to lose. Vivian noticed the shadow on the wall behind Nicole shift. She kept her face blank. Who hired you? Miles. Or someone else? Doesn't matter, Nicole snapped. Flash drive. Now. The silhouette slid closer. Vivian saw it clearly now, someone creeping up behind Nicole. All right, Adrian said, reaching inside his jacket. You want it. The instant his hand moved, the figure behind Nicole lunged, ripping the gun away. At the same moment Adrian lunged, twisting Nicole's arms behind her back. Nice work, Detective, Adrian told the newcomer. The man nodded and snapped cuffs around Nicole's wrists. Vivian saw a 30-something guy in a security uniform whose bearing screamed cop. Professional hit woman, Detective said. We've had her on our radar for weeks. Vivian looked at Adrian. You knew? Suspected, he said. Couldn't be sure. Until tonight. Outside, the commotion had quieted. Lights were back on. After Detective led Nicole away, Vivian Julian turned to Adrian. So will you finally tell me what the hell is going on? Adrian exhaled. Julian's murder ties into a massive insider trading ring involving several top players. After he died, those people worried the evidence would surface, so they want the flash drive back. And they think I have it? Julian's last call was to you, Adrian said. Of course they assume you do. Vivian pieced it together. But you already had the drive. Why keep quiet and let them come after me? Complex emotions crossed Adrian's face. Because I needed bait to flush out the real puppet master. And he paused. I wanted to see what you would do. Anger flared in her. You used me? We used each other, Adrian replied calmly. Didn't you record our conversations? Ready to take me down? They locked eyes. Tension crackling, underscored by that dangerous pull. Suddenly Adrian stepped in, yanked her against him, and kissed her hard, rough, possessive, devouring. Vivian struggled for a second, then kissed back, the clash turning into a duel for control. When they broke apart they were both breathless. I hate you, Vivian said, but there was little conviction in it. I know, Adrian murmured, thumb brushing her swollen lower lip. Doesn't change a thing. A knock sounded. Detective's voice drifted through. Caldwell. We need your statement. Adrian gave her one last look and left. Alone in the closet. Vivian leaned against the wall, head spinning. Everything had shifted, yet nothing had. Adrian might not have murdered her brother, but he was still the same cunning, manipulative man, and she was now certain she still loved him. A love that terrified her, because it was strong enough to destroy them both. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. The game just started. Next target, you. Vivian stared at the message, a slow smile curving her lips. Let the games begin. She was ready. Whatever waited ahead, she wouldn't back down. In this lethal contest, the greatest danger wasn't the enemy, it was herself, and the irresistible pull she felt toward that man. Back at South Point, exhaustion hit her like a wave. Tonight had proved the stakes were far higher than she'd imagined. She wasn't only sparring with Adrian, she was dancing with an invisible enemy who had already silenced Julian and now had her in the crosshairs. In the bathtub she tried to order her thoughts. The hot water loosened knotted muscles, but couldn't calm her whirling mind. If Adrian hadn't been behind her brother's death, then the old questions resurfaced. If it wasn't an accident, what really happened? Wrapped in a robe, she stepped out and saw several missed calls from an unknown number. As she hesitated, a new text arrived. Look outside. Heart hammering. She eased the curtain aside. The street below lay empty under sickly lamplight, until headlights flared across from the villa. A black sedan idled there. The window glided down. Even at a distance she recognized the profile. Adrian. He lifted his phone, signaling her to answer. Hers rang instantly. What are you doing here? She asked without greeting. Making sure you're safe, his low familiar voice replied through the line. By spying on me? By protecting you, he corrected. Tonight proved you're not safe. She leaned against the window, watching the car. You think Nicole was working alone? No, Adrian said. She was just a pawn. The real mover is still in the shadows. Silence stretched. They listened to each other breathe, an intimacy that both comforted and unsettled her. You never told me why you agreed to this marriage, Vivian said suddenly. With your power you could have refused. Adrian chuckled softly on the other end of the line. You think I can say no? You can do whatever you want, Vivian said with absolute certainty. You always have. A moment of silence. Then Adrian spoke again. Maybe what I want is to have you, no matter what. The words made her heart skip. She gripped the phone, unsure how to answer. Remember the aquarium? He asked suddenly. Where we kissed for the first time. Of course she remembered. The aquarium at midnight. Empty and echoing. Blue light rippling over them while schools of fish drifted around like they'd stepped into another world. It had been her 17th birthday, and Adrian, God knew how, had gotten the keys and smuggled her inside. You said it was your favorite place, he went on, because everything went quiet there, only fish and water. Her eyes stung. Why bring that up? Because I need you to remember there's more between us than hate and suspicion, he said, voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. There's something else. Just then she noticed a car rolling to a stop across the street. The window slid down and a long lens poked out, pointed straight at her. Adrian, she said sharply, there's a car behind you. Looks like a gunshot cracked through the night. Across the street, his side window exploded. Adrian, she screamed. Nothing. Only dead air. Her heart plummeted. She watched the suspicious car speed away while Adrian sat motionless. Ignoring her own safety, she grabbed a coat and bolted outside. By the time she reached his car her pulse was hammering, terrified of what she'd find. Inside, Adrian leaned against the driver's seat, a graze across his forehead, blood streaking his cheek, but his eyes were alert. The window was gone. The bullet had buried itself in the far door. You okay? She demanded, yanking the door open. He stared at her, expression unreadable. Why run out here? It's dangerous. Were you hit? She scanned him for wounds. Just a scratch, he said, catching her wrist. But you've exposed yourself. Get back inside. Another shot rang out, from a different angle. The slug punched the roof and they ducked in unison. More than one shooter, Adrian said, ice cold. We need to move. He fired the engine and the car lurched forward. A third bullet shattered the rear glass, spraying shards over the seats. Vivian ducked. She felt his hand shield the back of her head. He threaded through nighttime traffic, swerving, accelerating, trying to break any tail. Buckle up, he ordered. This'll be rough. She snapped the belt on and checked behind them. Anyone following? Not right now, he said, but that can change. He ducked into an underground garage, swapped to a pre-planned gray sedan, and minutes later they were back on the road. Where to? She asked. Safe house. One even quieter than the last. She exhaled, adrenaline ebbing, fear creeping in. Someone wanted them dead, or had just sent a very loud warning. She studied him. Streetlights strobed across his profile. The cut on his forehead had stopped bleeding, but the dry trail was still there. You're bleeding, she said. We should clean that. Later, he answered. Almost there. They pulled into a plain suburban cul-de-sac and stopped at a modest townhouse. Inside, decor was simple, anonymous, like any middle-class home. Safe enough, she asked. Safer than most, he said. Few people know it exists. He disappeared into the bathroom to dress the grays. She wandered the living room. It felt lived in, a novel on the coffee table. Bookmark halfway through. When she lifted the book, her breath caught. Her favorite out-of-print poetry collection, the one she'd once mentioned to him years ago. Adrian reappeared with a band-aid on his brow. He paused when he saw what she held. You live here? She asked. Sometimes, he said, heading for the kitchen. Drink? Why is this here? She wouldn't let it go. He poured 2 whiskeys and handed her one. I remembered you liked it. She took the glass, confused all over again. The same man who could be merciless had tucked away a book she'd casually loved. The contradiction felt impossible. We need to talk, she said. No games, no angles. He met her eyes and finally nodded. Ask. Your brother's death. Do you know who killed him? A short list. Business rivals. Inside competitors. Maybe even family. Miles? On the list, he admitted, but not the smartest name. She sipped. The whiskey burned. Why do they think I'm next? Because you have, or they think you have, what they want. But the flash drive is with you. They don't know that, he said, stepping closer. And there's another reason. Which is? He looked straight at her. Because you're my weakness. The words hung between them. Heavy. Undeniable. Her pulse spiked. Something long buried stirred. Why say that? She whispered. Because hurting you hurts me, and they know it, he said, voice low. It's true. He brushed her cheek with the back of his fingers, familiar, foreign, flooding her with memories both sweet and brutal. I never stopped thinking about you, he confessed. All these years. Her throat tightened. But you never came. I did, he said. You just never saw. He led her into the bedroom. One wall was lined with monitors showing live feeds, her old apartment, the cafe she frequented, her parents' house. You've been watching me? Fury and a twisted kind of gratitude collided inside her. Protecting you, he corrected. After I realized Julian might be hiding something about your brother's death. She spun toward him. Explain. He tapped a keyboard, opened a file. I found this. Julian was looking into your brother's death. Seems he thought it wasn't an accident. Vivian stared at the screen, breath jammed in her throat. Emails between Julian and a private investigator about her brother's death, hinting at murder. He thinks it was homicide, she asked, voice shaking. More complicated, Adrian said. He links it to a trade secret leak. Your brother may have uncovered something he shouldn't have. The room tilted. She steadied herself on the console. What something? We're not sure, he said, but it ties to a major Caldwell deal. Julian kept referencing a project. She'd never heard the name. What is it? I don't know, he admitted. Julian never spelled it out, but he was rattled, scared. She forced her mind to work. For years she'd blamed Adrian, but the truth looked darker, naughtier. We need everything on project, she said. Does the flash drive mention it? Adrian shook his head. I checked. Nothing, but Julian may have other stashes. Every screen flickered at once, dissolved to static. Then blazed a single red message. Stop digging. Next time we won't miss. The house lights died. Total blackout. Backup generator should have kicked in, Adrian muttered, fingers flying over dead controls. They're already inside. In the dark his hand found her arm. Follow me, secret exit. He guided her to a hidden panel behind the closet, shoved it open. A narrow service corridor yawned. Go, he whispered. Keep going. Don't stop. What about you? I'll be right behind. Move. She crawled in. The panel snapped shut. Blackness swallowed her. She groped forward until a sliver of light appeared, an iron door. It opened into a small garage holding a single single motorcycle. Footsteps scraped behind her. She spun, terrified, then breathed again. It was Adrian, a small suitcase in hand. They breached the outer ring, he said. We ride. He straddled the bike, handed her a helmet. Climb on. She pulled it on, swung up behind him, arms tight around his waist. The bike roared into the night, cold wind whipping her face while the heat of his body anchored her. For the length of that ride, hatred and suspicion evaporated, leaving only the raw instinct to survive and the terrible, growing knowledge that the greatest danger might not be the snipers at all, but the feeling rekindling inside her chest. It could save her. It could also ruin her completely. The motorcycle tore through the darkness, danger momentarily shrinking in the rear view, but Vivian knew the game had only started, and the deadliest moves were still to come.